If you're new here, I'm Immy and I've been doing a low buy year for 2026. Not just to save money, but also to plan for my future and to heal my relationship with consumption, which got a little bit out of control last year. I want to be as mindful as possible about the things that I buy. I also want to save for bigger expenses and for those items that would actually bring me joy, add value to my life, and be worth spending money on. So today I wanted to share with you the ways in which I'm saving my money, getting back on track with my finances and how I manage my money, and setting myself up for success for the rest of this low buy year. So if you've been doing your low buy year, you've got to a point where you've lost a bit of motivation or you've been a bit more relaxed about it because it's been the summer, hopefully this video will help you get back on track if that's what you're aiming for this year. I'll give you a quick overview of my expenses for last month and how much I spent, also how much I saved, how I've changed my priorities in terms of what I'm saving for and how I'm saving, and my debt repayments, which is just my student loan. But I'll put lots of chapters throughout this video so you can skip between the things that you find most interesting. If you're not interested in how much I've spent and the breakdown of that for last month, then you can just skip straight to my tips and what I've been using this year to help me save money and manage my money better. I did not grow up knowing about finances or how to manage my own finances. I was not taught this in school. This is not something that was ever really talked about at home. So this is something I have been learning for the past couple of years. In fact, 2020 to 2022 were the formative years in when I really started to learn to manage my money. So I'm just hoping that this inspires you to learn a bit more about your own finances and hopefully create a budget and be able to spend the money that you're earning on things that you actually want to be and saving for your future so that you feel a little bit more secure in this, what I would call an unstable time. As always, if you find this video helpful, then please give it a thumbs up as it really supports my channel, but only if you liked it, and consider subscribing so that you never miss another video. I have lots of finance and low buy content prepared for the coming months, which I'm very excited about. And of course, a wide array of other content that I love to make about food, sustainability, making things yourself, learning new skills and hobbies and things like that. Before we get into the video, I just want to say a massive thank you to GreenFi for kindly sponsoring this portion of today's video. Managing our money is hard enough without also having to think about how our money is used to support industries that we might be against, like fossil fuels, which is why I wanted to introduce you to GreenFi. If you haven't heard of GreenFi, they're a debit card that actively fights against climate change. With GreenFi Spend and Save accounts, they guarantee that your money remains 100% fossil fuel free and that your deposits are never invested in things like oil, coal, or natural gas projects. There's no monthly fee and you can earn cash back with their green marketplace. This means you can earn up to 6% back when you're shopping sustainable brands like Thrive Market, Patagonia, and with EV charging. GreenFi is also great in saving money as they give you up to 3% APY, whereas traditional banks like Chase only give you 0.1%. And you get all the perks of a traditional bank like fee-free ATM withdrawals, early access to direct deposits, and FDIC insurance. But with the added benefit of carbon offsets for A+ members, the option to round up purchases to plant trees, and most importantly, the knowledge that your money isn't directly funding new projects that could cause even more environmental destruction. So if you'd like to get started or learn more about GreenFi, then you can check out the link in the description below. So let's look at my overview for my June money spending as I'm still wrapping up all of my conclusions and my budget sheet for July. So let's take a look at what I spent in June and talk a little bit about some of the things that I've kind of learned along the way. So June marks the halfway point of this low buy year, which is kind of wild to me, especially since we're actually almost getting towards the end of August now. And unsurprisingly, there have been lots of ups, lots of downs, some good months and some okay months. Weeks where I've spent nothing and days where I've given in to my impulses and bought things that I shouldn't have, probably couldn't afford, and was definitely emotionally driven. I've also put money towards bigger expenses, like I've talked about a hiking safety device that very much was forethought and planned out. And my husband and I have shifted our savings goals to be more in line with kind of how we're feeling about the future and some of the bigger decisions that we are getting closer to making. So we found comfort in finally creating a joint emergency fund, but we also do keep most of our finances separate, but we plan a lot of things together. And that's just what works for us. Okay, so June finance overview. I'm gonna read from my computer so that I can make sure it's all correct. So my rent has gone up by $25 each per month. So now I pay $1,225 a month on rent. My credit card bill for this month was $1,218.47. My insurance health, dental, eye, etc. is $120 a month. And for my bills for gas, electric and water, for this month it was $57.52. So for savings, I put $500 into a joint emergency fund, the one that I have with my husband. We're hoping to reach a joint goal where we can cover both of our expenses for 6 months, and then after that point, we're going to stop saving into that emergency fund and put the rest of that money towards buying a house. I put $250 aside for car insurance, car maintenance, all of that kind of stuff. $200 or $100 to $200 towards travel so that I never have to worry about being able to afford visiting my family and friends once a year. And I put $0 towards retirement this month. Student loan, I put £200 towards that. My student loan is in the UK, so it's in pounds, just to make that clear. I did make one very big payment towards my student loan earlier this year, and because of that, I'm just paying the kind of minimum balance that I have to pay. Okay, so my credit card breakdown. For groceries this month, I spent $394.15. For petrol, I spent $48.19. For yarn, and I finally bought some blocking mats, I spent $190.69. This is where the impulse and kind of splurging has gone this month. Eating out, I spent $81.68. Coffee out, $21.14. Knitting patterns, $16. House, I spent $115. This includes a Who Gives a Crap subscription for toilet paper, which is something I always buy. And this actually has been affected by the new tariffs. So the box that I usually buy has gone up by $5 per box. This also includes dishwasher tablets and compost for the garden. So very boring household things. Subscriptions, $68.81. I've allowed this to build up a little bit. I'm not quite sure how I've got back to this number in subscriptions, so this is something that I'm going to go through in my budget sheet and start culling quite quickly. Travel, I spent $17.50, and then gym, I spent $95.50, which I do every month. Okay, so now that I've given you an overview on everything I've spent this month, what I've saved, and some of those details, I want to get into kind of the things that I have found myself doing over the last 7 months to really help manage my money and save money. I'm really hoping that this can help you or inspire you just to make one change or just try to get on top of your finances, because honestly, that is the whole point of me sharing this stuff online. Sharing detailed financial information is not exactly comfortable, especially when I come from a family that don't really talk about, or we do now, but we never used to really talk about finances. And I think that the more vocal you are with your friends and your family, and especially with your partner about your finances, what your goals are, how much you're able to save and all that kind of stuff, and especially debt, it can help you understand how to manage your money better and just set yourself up really well for your future. It's also a good way to check to see who out of your friendship group, or if debt is normalized, or how people are paying off debt, or what someone considers to be a lot of debt and what someone considers to not be a lot of debt. These conversations can really help shape and manage your kind of risk tolerance and what you can prioritize in terms of your own financial journey. So I'm really hoping that by sharing this, either it makes you feel better about your own finances, or it helps you to find a way to get started with what you are going to do, and just help you tackle one financial goal at a time. Okay, it's actually time to head home, so let me just quickly switch. Okay, so here are my top tips that are currently working for me. I know I've mentioned this in every single low buy video that I've done, but it really is the most important step to take before you can even consider how to manage your money properly, or even understand where it's going. Having an idea about what you're spending your money on, how much your bills really are, how many subscriptions you really have, and what debt you have to pay down will give you a better indication of whether you're wasting money or actually it's going towards a good place, and how much you have left over to put towards things that really matter to you, or just to have aside. You can get started with a really simple budget sheet that's very straightforward, just adding a few columns. Categorize everything and start inputting all of your expenses. If you can put everything on one card, it makes everything obviously much easier, but if you can't do that, then just make sure you find a way to collate all the information from all of the banks or cards that you're using. Once you have an idea of how much you're spending, if you're wasting any money, and what you have left over that could go towards savings, it's time to set up your automated savings account. And don't let anybody tell you that what you have to save is too little, because everything counts. Treat savings like a bill. This is what people call paying yourself first. And if you haven't heard this term, it's essentially a personal finance concept where you prioritize saving and investing a portion of your income each month before spending on other expenses. What I like to do is have a little chart with my income at the top, and then I categorize all of my expenses. So it might be house, i.e. rent, bills, student loan, Roth IRA, credit card bill, all those kinds of things. And in each of those columns, I put how much I hope to spend in each of those things. And then at the bottom, it takes the sum of all of those things together minus from your income, so you can see how much you would have left over by the end of the month. Other things that might include are my car sinking fund, my travel sinking fund, my joint emergency fund, and I think that's it. So I essentially treat my savings like a bill. I factor them into my budget before I've even spent any money for that next month. And these numbers are based on reasonably looking at my income and what I possibly do have and could reasonably save each month. Remember, you want to have realistic goals, because if they are completely unrealistic, then you'll just fail at meeting those goals each month, and then you'll feel very dejected and unmotivated, and it will probably make you not want to continue on with this. So it's important to be hyper realistic, even if that means going a bit below what you probably actually could save, and then you can just add on each month or every few months whenever you start to feel more comfortable. At first, my husband and I put $100 each into our joint emergency fund. We did that for about 2 years. Then we recently upped it to $250 each a month, and now we have just recently upped it to $500 a month each to really try and be very aggressive about that specific savings goal. And this leads me on to sinking funds, which have been a lifesaver for me over the past couple of years. Sinking funds have single-handedly ensured that none of my savings goals have been ruined by one single bill. I've mentioned it many times throughout the year, but when I have big bills like my car insurance, for example, which we pay twice a year, I have a sinking fund which I put money into each month that goes towards that big bill. So it's a sinking fund because obviously it is intended to be drained and then replenished. And the reason why we do this is because it's cheaper to pay for our car insurance twice a year instead of every single month. But of course I do need to save for that each month, because it is a large sum of money, and I don't want any of my other savings goals to be ruined by that one big bill. So to ensure that all of these bills get paid and all of the things that I want to do get covered, I decide on a number each month that I can reasonably do to put into each sinking fund. So as I mentioned before, I have a car sinking fund and a holiday sinking fund. For travel to see my family, I put $100 to $200 a month into a sinking fund, depending on what I have to spare that month. And then for car, I put $250 aside. And that's not just for car insurance, it's also for if I have to get an oil change or if I have to get a service, things like that, because I don't want to be caught out like I was earlier this year when I had a $300 bill. What was it for? I think to have my brakes changed. But luckily I could cover that all by my sinking fund because I prepped ahead. Once I reach a certain point where I have filled those sinking funds to the maximum that I would need to have, then I don't put any more excess money in there. Anything that would go towards that, I put into an investment account instead, which leads me on to shopping around for big expenses each year. We have changed our car insurance 3 times. The first one was very expensive. The second one we shopped around last year and were able to save about $100 each. And this year we were shopped around again and were able to save another $300 each. And that has brought our insurance down so dramatically that it makes it far more manageable. So for your big expenses, make sure to always shop around, especially if contracts are coming up. There are so many ways to save money on big expenses or even monthly expenses like your internet bill. The amount of times my sister has managed to get her internet bill back down simply by calling, cancelling, and then having them call a couple weeks later. She's very skilled in the art of playing these companies at their own game. Moving on to one of my biggest expenses, which is eating, cooking, buying groceries. Because groceries are so expensive, I try to prioritize buying good food and eating out very, very rarely. I meal prep a few times a week. I make sure I have some food prepped. I make sure I clean the fridge and go through the cupboards at least once a month, or clean the fridge once a week. Because if we're spending good money on food, I absolutely do not want that to go to waste. My next video on Sunday is actually a project pantry video, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that one. If you can shop seasonally and locally, oftentimes throughout the year, especially in the late summer season, items can be much more affordable depending of course on where you are. Which leads me on to the next one, which is actually subscriptions. And this is something that I have had a lot of difficulty with. I've definitely brought mine down and they've gone back up again, but go through all of your subscriptions to make sure you're actually aware of what you're spending your money on and how many subscriptions you actually have and those ones that you might have forgotten about. If you're not getting much use out of them, cancel them. If the company doesn't really align with your ethical values, cancel them. If they keep raising their prices every year and that doesn't really align with your budget anymore, then cancel them. Which honestly leads me on to the idea of using your library card like a credit card. Books, audiobooks, movies, tools, online courses, these are all free things that you can get from your library. Depending, of course, on where you are, there are lots of things like you can get your cookbooks from your library, you can rent tools if you have a tool library in your city. And if you're into crafts like me, you can borrow knitting patterns from your library, cookbooks as I already mentioned. And they have so many other hobby books there if you're into crochet or if you're into sewing, if you just want to learn how to sew. If you want to learn a musical instrument, they have music books. If you do live in Denver, then I would highly recommend checking out their tool library. And also they have free workshops at your library. So I highly recommend really trying to go out of your way to get your library card and looking there first before purchasing new items. And of course, using up everything that you already have. If you haven't heard of Project Pan, that's something along with low buy, no buy year that's been very popular this year. And it's a way for predominantly beauty or people in the beauty space were going through all of their items to make sure that everything was finished and these items just weren't going to waste. But I think that it's something that we could do in our own homes as well. Whether it's your shampoo or skincare, whether it's your washing up liquid or laundry tabs, you know, anything that you're not using all the way down before you buy something new, that is a really good thing to look at, especially if you're into makeup or you just have lots of different concealers and moisturizers, things like that. Project Pan is just a really great way of realigning with using what you already have and thinking about what you actually like and value rather than buying new things without using the stuff you already have. I really want to learn to play the guitar. I am really missing having music in my life. If you don't know me, I have grown up playing the piano, the saxophone and the clarinet. We just don't have space here for a piano and my saxophone is back in the UK. It needs a little work. But for the guitar, my first thought was not let me go to a shop to buy one. It's to look on Facebook Marketplace to see if there was a secondhand one available. And lo and behold, there were honestly hundreds of guitars that were available for, you know, $100, $200. It doesn't have to be a fancy one. It's my first ever guitar. So thinking about buying secondhand before even considering buying new will save you a lot of money in the long run. This kitchen table behind me, that was secondhand. My desk right here, that was secondhand. This lamp that actually no longer works was secondhand. I can't tell you how much money we saved when we moved into this house because we bought so many things secondhand. Even our bed frame, secondhand. And our chest of drawers, secondhand. And our sofa actually was secondhand. And the TV stand was also secondhand. This is something I like to do every single autumn, but do a wardrobe reset where you go through everything you have and try everything on. It's laborious, but you can make it fun. Put on some music, you could invite some friends around, you could have a glass of wine or something soft, whatever you like, and try on all of your clothes. Instead of buying new, you could try restyling old items, or if you live in an area where you have true seasons, you can get your old stuff back out. You can do a massive clothes swap with your friends. And this is especially helpful if you feel like your style has changed. For me personally, my body has changed quite a lot over the last 2 years. So that has been quite difficult for me in terms of what I can and can't wear. I have a lot of items in my cupboard that still are a little bit small for me and some that fit me perfectly and some that are too big for me. So I feel like having a range of sizes is very important for me because my body fluctuates a lot, and having quite a few different items because we have such distinct seasons here. So those are just things that you need to think about and not feel bad about if your body changes and you do need to buy some other clothes. Thrifting is obviously great. If you are visiting Colorado and you like the kind of mountain vibe, I guess, mountain towns always have really good thrift stores and you can find so many great things secondhand. So I'd highly recommend that if you do ever visit Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, places like that. One thing I have done recently is to downgrade my phone plan because I just didn't need to have such a big plan, and that has saved me quite a bit of money each month. I've also been looking at other things that I could possibly downgrade. Obviously, I'm not going to downgrade things that are safety adjacent or something like that, but if you have a few plans, subscriptions that you're like, I don't really need the premium version or whatever, then downgrading is always a good option. I never ever go to the grocery shop without a list because it's so easy for me to think, oh, I wouldn't mind trying this today, or I'll just put this in here, and then I get to the till and I have instant regret. So make sure you always have a list, even if you're going and it's not food shopping, but you need to buy something for whatever reason. Make sure you have a list so that you know what your purpose is, why you're going shopping, and what you're there for. I have found this to really help me with impulse shopping, and I can just move a bit more quickly throughout the shop, so I'm less tempted by the things that are at that perfect eye level. Try baking or making your own snacks for hiking or road trips. This is things that I personally have been doing, as I said. So whenever we go on hikes or we go on road trips, I try to make a lot of the food at home so that we can take it with us. It ends up being healthier but also much more affordable. We went camping recently before we did a big hike the next day, and I just made sure to cook all the food that we were going to have at the campsite, bring it with us, heat it all up, and it was delicious, and it was much more affordable than eating out or having to pop into a store to get some extra bits. Throughout this year, for my low buy year, I've been implementing no buy days or no spend days. I like to pick a few days a week or a month, which some days are just off limits. This is where understanding where all your money goes comes in very handy, because then you'll know days that your subscriptions go out or things like that, and you can plan for the days where truly nothing is coming out of your bank, and you can assign them to be a no or low spend day. This has been very helpful for me to remind me to think about using what I already have at home, or putting things off for a couple of days, or just realizing that we don't need to live in a society where we are constantly having things immediately given to us. I've also been meal prepping for those I can't be bothered days. Those days where I would love to just get some food out or order a takeaway, which, there's nothing wrong with, but I am trying to save money. So I've started using my freezer in a very tactical way, and have been meal prepping for those days with a meal that kind of feels like a treat or feels more takeaway-ish, so that it's like my favorite meals, or it's more hearty, or those kind of things. And I have loved that so far. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I love to learn new things, but I have really been trying to learn things that are going to be particularly helpful or handy, like skills to repair things, sewing to repair jeans and buttons and stuff like that, and learning just some basic car mechanics is something I'm interested in, as well as my bike. So that's a really good thing if you want to save a bit of money. If, like me, you're doing a low buy year, I try to do a no spend kind of challenge throughout this year. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's 3 days in a row. This can really help reset your mindset towards your money and kind of realign your motivation with why you're doing a low buy year in the first place, or a low spend. Those two are obviously very different things, and it's important that you know why you're not buying as many things or why you're not spending as much money. So doing those challenges can be really great interspersed throughout the year, and I've always found that it makes me feel very confident and like I have control over my money, or a little bit more control just generally, so that I don't feel like things are kind of spiraling. Of course, I'll always promote growing what you can in terms of food. Herbs are very expensive, but some of them can be grown quite easily at home. Of course, you can have some upfront costs with that, so you have to weigh up deciding whether it's worth it for you. I also think that propagating plants from your friends or yourself and giving them to friends is a great way to kind of build community. And I think trying to actually build your village is very, very, very important. You can share things, you can borrow things, trade skills. If your friend will drive you to the airport, or you'll drive them to the airport, you'll look after someone's dog, or they'll look after your dog. You'll borrow some salt from your neighbor, things like that. Building your village can help you not only save money, but build a real community around you that actually support one another, which in this day and age, I think is incredibly important. And that comes under definitely the idea of sharing resources. This is something I've been really working on recently, and has been very, very, very beneficial to my life, not just obviously the practical side, but emotionally as well. Okay, so those are all the money saving tips that I personally have been doing this year that I would highly recommend that you do. The number one is to go and look at your budget sheet, and actually create one if you haven't, put in all of your expenses, and start taking control of where your money is. I would love to know if you're doing a low buy or a no spend, or a low spend or a no buy year. Please let me know in the comments, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed this update. It was very much more casual because I just wanted to give you some advice on the things that I personally have been doing. That's it. Okay, Sunday, I'm doing a Project Pantry video, so make sure you're subscribed, and I will see you then. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.